Hey, what's going on, everybody? I am Lex, and welcome to the Mental Warrior 22 show. Thank you, everyone, for joining tonight. And before we go any further, I need you here with me. No half listening. We're not treating this like background noise tonight. Something in you has brought you here. And tonight, we're not doing surface level motivation. That was weird. So, we're going deeper tonight. We're going a little more in a different direction. So, we're talking about the difference between living and what hurt you. And we're taking your power back from it, right? So stay with me here. I want us to lock in. So tonight, this isn't going to be a motivational speech. Tonight is going to be more of a mirror. And some of you are going to hear some things tonight that is going to make you uncomfortable. And that's okay. I want you to understand that because comfort is something that's been lying to a lot of us, right? Comfort is what's been lying to a lot of people. Comfort has kept a lot of people stuck. Comfort has taught people how to survive in what hurts them. And instead of changing what hurts them, right? So I want us to tune in tonight, right? And I want you to drop in down below, drop in where you're coming in from. Drop a coffee cup in the comments if you're here with me tonight. Danielle, Linda, hi, welcome. I want you guys to drop a coffee cup if you're here with me tonight, if you're listening. And I want you to ask yourself this before we even start. I want you to ask yourself, what truth have I been avoiding because it would require me to change? What truth have I been avoiding because it would require me to change? And here's the line that's going to set the tone for everyone tonight, right? Some of you are not stuck. You just have gotten familiar with what is breaking you. I want you to remember that. Some of you are not stuck. You've just gotten familiar with what is breaking you. And this isn't an insult, right? Before we go any further, I want you to understand this is not an insult. We are not victim shaming here, right? Tonight we're talking about victim mindset versus accountability, right? So again, this is not an insult. This is awareness. There's a difference between being wounded and building a home inside that wound. There is a difference between being wounded and building a home inside that wound. There's a difference between acknowledging pain and organizing your life around it, right? So when I say that tonight, I'm not dismissing what happened to you, right? We're not dismissing the pain, right? Whatever happened to you, the trauma, anything that happened in your life, listen, that pain is very much real, okay? What happened to you is very much real. I am asking whether what happened to you is still running you. What happened to you, whether that is still controlling you. So, again, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. Matt put not coffee. You should have coffee, Matt. So, my next question to you all is what have you gotten used to that should have never become normal, right? And you can share it if you want. You don't have to if it's something too deep, but I want you to ask yourself, what have you gotten used to that should have never become normal? Pain is weakness leaving the body. Yeah. So, and be honest with yourself, whether this is a draining relationship, whether it is a pattern of procrastination, a lack of boundaries, right? Or the voice in your head that just keeps cutting you down, right? That voice that keeps telling you, like, you're not enough, you're not good enough, you shouldn't do this. What if you fail? All that constant negativity, right? I want you to name it, right? Because once you name it, you can stop bowing to it, right? I I like to use the reference of, if you've ever watched any of those horror films with the demons, right? They always say once you learn the name of the demon, you take its power away from it, right? This is the same. Once you name it, right? Once you name it, you can stop bowing down to it. You can start taking your power back from it. So once again, everyone, thank you for joining. And I want to remind you that this is not about blaming you, right? We're going to go deep and we're going to talk about some things, right? So I need to say this one last time. This is not about blaming you. This is about giving you your power back, right? It's us taking it, because the moment you hear the word accountability, accountability, once we hear that, a lot of us hear accusations, right? A lot of people hear shame. They hear everything is your fault. And some people aren't ready for accountability, right? Tina, always worried if people are upset with me, right? See, that's something I used to be big on people pleasing because of that. I didn't want people to be upset at me. So I would constantly have that little inner dialogue, like, oh my God, like, did I do something wrong? Should I be a little this way? No, I'm being too extra. I need to calm down. And a lot of times that's just right here, right? They don't even know what's going on. That's just you. And that's tough because that comes from somewhere, right? So this tonight, what we're doing is helping each other get our power back, right? We're not gonna blame ourselves. We're not gonna go into the shame. We're not gonna hear everything is our fault, right? We're not doing that tonight, right? What we are doing tonight is we're separating the responsibility from the blame, right? Blame says you caused every wound. Responsibility says you get to choose what happens next. And I need y'all to remember that, right? Blame says you caused every wound, and we ain't blaming each other, right? We're not going to blame ourselves. Nope. The responsibility says you get to choose what happens next. That is the power. That is your power. So if something inside you tonight starts to tighten up, you start to tense up, you start to kind of get a little anxiety, if you feel defensive about anything that we're talking about tonight, I need you to breathe and stay with me, right? You don't need to defend your pain here, but you need to decide what you're going to do with it. Tonight, this is the conversations that we're having. Shannon, people pleasing. I agree. Michelle, staying small to avoid hurting feeling of others. I understand that, Michelle. Tonight, listen, no more of that, right? We're not playing small. We're not playing small for others. We're not trying to fit into their little bitty box. No. Dakota, my addiction problem, whether it be from as simple as caffeine, but sometimes alcohol and further medications, as it runs in the family and with mental hurdle. It has and will take a lot to completely overcome. I will overcome. Dakota, brother, thank you for being here, first of all. And I agree. Listen, you're a badass, and I know what you're capable of, and I know what you're doing. So you got this. And listen, you don't have to face it alone. So, but I do understand. And I appreciate you sharing that. Thank you. So the next question, what would change in your life if you stopped hearing accountability as a punishment and started hearing it as power? What would change in your life if you stopped hearing accountability as punishment and started hearing it as power? What would change? We're flipping these things around, right? We're taking accountability and removing it as punishment, not seeing it, right? Because we often hear that, right? You hear that a lot of times, and it's usually used in a different context, right? Like it's a more like authoritarian way, right? Like last week we talked about, we were talking about ghosting, right? And how people need to be accountable for their actions, right? But when you hear that, it almost sounds like you're in trouble, right? So Tonight, we're looking at it in a different way. We're not looking at it as in a punishment, right? We need to hear that as our power, right? I'm going to be accountable for myself and I get to choose what I do next. That's my power. I'm not going to let you choose it for me. So, Marie, realization. Absolutely. Zam, emotional and mental abuse from a narcissist. Listen, that happens to be the common theme and something I hear quite often from a lot of people. So, again, what happens and what would change in your life if you stop hearing accountability as punishment and started hearing it as power? Because somewhere along the way, a lot of people started confusing pain with identity, right? Tina, it would change the feeling about the situation. It's owning the consequences of my actions that I took. Right, right. It's owning up to the consequences, good or bad. They're your choices, right? Um, I feel like accountability is healthy in the sense like it helps in reflection and improvement. I agree. I look at it as constructive criticism, right? It's when it's done right, it's meant to help you grow. It's not meant to put you down, right? Angela, hey. So, somewhere along the way, a lot of people started confusing pain with identity, right? Pain became personality, disappointment became your story, biography, and then the struggle became your introduction, right? And how that sounds to me is I'm just guarded. I'm just broken. I'm just bad at relationships. I'm just always the one people leave. I'm just the kind of person who can't finish things. And I want you to listen to that language, right? Because this is no longer describing that experience anymore. This is turning an experience into a self-definition. Luann, changes behaviors. Absolutely. Absolutely. So I want us to listen to the language, right? Something that negative self-talk that we tend to do a lot, right? It's turning the experience itself, what happened to you, into like a self-definition, right? And once the pain becomes your identity, what happens? You stop fighting it. You start protecting it, right? You start defending it and you start building your life around it. That's what happens all the time. And it doesn't matter. I mean, it doesn't matter in what capacity. It's something that often happens. And, you know, how many of us have met someone, or maybe we're the ones doing it, who are constantly in that headspace and they have every ability to change that mindset, but everything they say is, oh, you just don't understand. Oh, you just don't know. Oh, you just don't know. And it's a but this, but that, right? Or they're in a relationship where they could keep defending that that negativity and all that stuff happening in that relationship, and they're defending that, right? They're protecting it. So, question, what label have you put on yourself that actually came from pain, not truth? What label have you put on yourself that has come from pain and not truth? What label have you put on yourself that actually came from pain and not truth, right? So, one thing that I want you to think about when this live is over, I want you to write one sentence that starts with, I went through that, but I am not that. when this live is over, it's something I would like for you to practice. I want you to write down a sentence that starts with, I went through that, but I am not that, right? And again, I want to make this clear, right? Like victim mindset it's not always dramatic, right? It's not. Sometimes it's very subtle, that victim mindset, right? Sometimes it's a little clean, it's polished, right? Sometimes it even sounds intelligent, right? But sometimes it hides behind the actual hurt. It hides behind you actually being hurt. And sometimes it hides behind you being very busy, right? The victim mindset says, I would change, but, right? I would start, but I would heal, but, right? I would set that boundary, but, right? There's always a reason. There's always a story, right? There is always one more delay. There's always one more but, right? And some of those reasons, they're real, right? It's not taken away from you, right? Some of those reasons are very much real, but real reasons can still be excuses, right? Real reasons can still become excuses when they're used to like avoid the actual movement. If that situation is being used to avoid actually progressing, actually taking the step towards healing and removing yourself from that mindset. Thank you, Linda. Marie, I went through that, but I am not that. Exactly. Exactly. Amelia, I feel like I am an empath, and part of that has made me tolerate more than I should have. I could understand that. It took me a long time to understand, and it's something I shared the other day. I said, I want everyone to eat, but I understand it is not my job to fix everyone a plate. Sometimes you have to set those healthy boundaries for yourself, right? So I want you all to think about this as well. Where in your life do you keep saying but, right? Where in your life do you keep saying but? You know, I would apply for that job, but, right? I want to leave this toxic cycle, this toxic relationship, but I would ask for help, but. Where in your life do you keep saying but, right? That but is often where your growth is being delayed, right? That 3-letter word is what's delaying your progress, right? That how many of us want to apply for that job, but, myself included, listen, I've worked hard, gone to school, earned my degrees, and there are many times where I'll look at a job and I'm like, I want that job, but I don't think I'm good enough for it. I don't think they'll hire me. I don't think I am marketable. I don't think they would want me. Right? I'm not what they're looking for. Right? Theo, absolutely. Words carry energy. We need to be careful of the words we use. I agree. I agree. Michelle, moving and opening a clinic. See? So it's asking ourselves what's really stopping us, That butt is carrying so much weight and we're giving it so much power, right? So let's take a look at this. Let's look at this victim mindset, right? Victim mindset is saying life is happening to me. Life is happening to me, and I have little to no agency, right? I have life is happening to me and I have little to no agency. Accountability is saying Not everything was my choice, but what I do next is, right? What happened to you may or may have not been within your control. What happened to you happened to you. But that accountability and that responsibility gets to tell you, hey, what I do next is me. It's my choice, right? Linda, life is happening for me. Absolutely. It's not happening to you, right? We're living this life, right? It's not happening to you. So victim mindset keeps your eyes locked into the past. That's where it keeps you, right? That trauma. That's where those struggling with PTSD, with that anxiety, with that depression, right? It's part of that. And being locked in that victim mindset, it keeps you locked and stuck in the past. But again, accountability is going to teach you to use the past, not to live inside it. Accountability is what's going to utilize that, right? In every aspect of your life, we need to take that, right? You learn from the past. That's what we should. We shouldn't live in it. We shouldn't stay stuck in it, right? We take what happened to us in the past, whether it is take what you learned from the military, good or bad, use that, apply it to something better in the future. Take whatever happened in that crappy relationship, right? That toxic relationship that you keep saying you want to leave, but, right? Take what you learned and move forward with healthy boundaries, right? Don't trap yourself in that even when you escape that relationship, now you're just looking at the world through those lenses. I want you to take your power back, right? Don't live inside of it, right? The victim mindset is going to ask you, why does this keep happening to me, right? Why does this keep happening? Accountability is going to ask, what patterns am I still participating in, right? Isn't that the definition of insanity? Keep doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results, right? So Meg replying to Theo, especially the words that we speak to ourselves. Absolutely, right? So I want you to ask yourself, what patterns am I still participating in that's keeping me stuck? Lori, changing mindset, changing learned behavior. Absolutely, right? So the second question takes courage, right? Because it puts your hands back on the wheel, right? We keep hearing that, Jesus take the wheel, right, Linda? Well, we're talking about tonight, you putting your hands back on the wheel, right? Accountability, it puts it on you. Accountability is going to say, I get to change this, right? Not allowing what happened to you in the past control you, right? Now you're the driver again. So which question do you ask yourself more often? Is it the why me or what now? How often do we fall on just difficult times that we stress about things and we just stay stuck in that, oh, why me? Or something comes up and you're like, what now? Like, right? And if the answer is making you uncomfortable, again, good, because nothing good is going to happen while you're comfortable, right? Discomfort is information, right? It is showing you where the shift really needs to happen. And I want to get personal with you for a moment, right? Because I know what that feels like, to be carrying a lot and still showing up, trying to be the strong one. I know what it feels like to keep pushing, to keep performing, to keep handling business, right? While you're just stuck in there, right? How many times, I can't tell you how many times I'm like, why me? Why does this keep happening, right? And it made me question, like, are you healed, or have you just learned how to perform in that, stay in that mindset, right? Because that question matters, because for like some of you, you don't need another compliment about how strong you are, right? You need that permission, like you don't need that permission for that survival thing. Amelia, all things in life change under pressure. I agree, Marie. I'm so uncomfortable, not even funny. Listen, I'm a strong believer that when I do the things that I want to do, or like if it doesn't excite me or make me feel nervous or uncomfortable, like it probably ain't for me, right? So, how many of us have said to ourselves, like, I'm just tired, right? Like, I'm just tired. When the truth was, you were just really disappointed, resentful, or emotionally overloaded, right? I want you to, like, if you felt that way, you feel tired, you feel emotionally overloaded, you feel like sometimes you're stuck, right? It's not that you're permanently stuck in that victim mindset, is you sometimes might keep pivoting towards that. Maria, I'm tired of being strong or pretending to be okay. Don't pretend. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I like sincerely mean that. I say don't pretend, right? If it makes people uncomfortable when they ask and you tell them you're not okay, that's a them problem, right? Because every time I hear someone tell me, oh, you just need to smile more, you just need to be happy, to me, that feels like you're asking me to fake it till I make it. So you feel comfortable with yourself while I'm still struggling. I will not. Um, Lori, sometimes we need to feel that uncomfortable to move. Linda, emotional overload or overwhelm is a thing. I agree. I agree. And that word tired tends to become a safe word, right? It's easier to say tired than to say, I'm angry that I keep accepting less than I deserve, right? It's easier to say tired than to say, I am grieving the version of the life I thought I would have by now, right? It's easier to say, I'm tired than to say, I am stuck in a pattern I know is costing me my peace. So the real question is, what is underneath your tired? What is underneath that tired, right? Because tonight we're going to stop using like one small word to hide the bigger truth, right? So here's the part where many people tend to get trapped. If you only see yourself as the one who was hurt, then you're going to miss the ways you are still handing your power away, right? You may miss the ways you are still handing your power away because you're seeing yourself as the one who was hurt, right? You hand it over in so many different ways, right? You hand it in fear, you hand it in avoidance, you hand it to the opinion of the person who wounded you, right? How many of you have been in a relationship where that person who is supposed to love you unconditionally is the one continuously wounding you and making you feel lesser and stuck, right? You already feel like you're in that victim mindset, but that person continues to, right? Or family members or other people, right? Um, so you hand it in that fear, you hand it in that opinion of the person who wounded you. You may hand it to the past version of yourself, right? That no longer deserves the control. For for most of us, veterans who have, who are suffering from the PTSD and from other stuff, or for those who are struggling life after the military, that identity, right? We're still handing that to that past version of us and we're stuck there, right? So that's where we continue to start being like, man, I would be this way by now, but man, I used to be a badass back then, but you still are. But you keep holding on to that person instead of recognizing that that person's just a part of your life. That was a chapter in your life, right? That person made you the badass that you are today. You just don't see it, right? Because we're stuck in that hiding behind that tired word, right? So I want you to read that again in your spirit, right? A past version of you does not get to run your whole future. So, Marie, or your own made up story about the relationship. Here I'm thinking I'm so hurt, not realizing I hurt the other person as well. They're just better at hiding it. Absolutely. Absolutely. So I want you to ask yourselves, what old version of you is still making current decisions? What old version of you is still making the current decisions? Is it the abandoned you? Is it the betrayed you? Is it the insecure you? Is it, like we mentioned earlier, is it the people pleasing you? Is that the old version of you that is still making the current decisions, right? Because healing is not pretending that the version never existed, right? Healing is thanking that version for surviving, but then refusing to let it keep driving you, okay? And I need to challenge you guys with something tonight. A lot of people say that they want peace, right? We often say that a lot. We want peace. But what we actually want is, at times, the comfort without change. Peace is not passive, peace is built. You have to build that peace, right? And how do we build that peace? Peace is built with boundaries, peace is built with honesty, with grief work, right? Sometimes it's grieving the old version of you, right? Sometimes you have to kill that old version of you in order to be the person you are today, right? How many times do you hear someone, or you may have said it yourself, listen, I worked this hard. I worked really hard to be this peaceful, right? Because it takes a lot of work, right? It takes a lot of things that happen in your life to be at a level of peace, right? Peace is built with decisions, right? So if you're praying for peace, if you're wanting that peace while avoiding every action that would protect it, then you're not waiting on peace. You're just waiting on magic, right? You're waiting on something that it's an illusion. So, Linda, yes, peace is built with boundaries and hard conversations. Tina, it is good to learn and adjust. Ralphine, welcome. So, what action have you been avoiding that would actually create the peace that you keep saying you want? What action have you been avoiding that would actually create the peace that you keep saying that you want? I want you to write that down or take a mental note of that, because that isn't random. That is probably the next right move. That's the next move that you need to look at, right? So ask yourself, what story have I replaced, or what story have I repeated so many times that now it feels like the truth? When you enter that headspace, that mindset, what story do you keep repeating so many times that now it feels like the truth, right? Is it that negative self-talk, right? I'm not enough. This keeps happening to me. Like, maybe it is people always leave. Maybe it's nothing good ever lasts for me. Maybe it's I always keep messing things up. Nobody understands me. I have to do everything alone, right? And these stories matter because what you repeat, what you rehearse, and like what you rehearse, you become more likely to live out, right? That becomes your new reality. You start believing that stuff, right? It's kind of like being in a relationship and someone keeps putting you down and telling you you're nothing. Once you leave that relationship, you'll never accept a compliment. You stay there thinking you're nothing, right? So, what story are you rehearsing with your own mouth? What are you telling yourself, right? And I want you to replace one repeated lie tonight with one grounded truth, right? Not this fake positivity, right? Truth, right? Like, I am learning. I am allowed to change. I can choose differently now. Those are the things that I want you to look at, right? A grounded truth, right? Fill those in. Like, I am learning, whatever that is. I am allowed to change. I can choose differently now. Marie, choosing peace over chaos is a choice. It's been hard. I learned it. I learned I was used to the chaos. Yikes. I think a lot of us are. A lot of us are. So before I go any further, Theo, would you please? I'd like to take a moment to give a special thanks and pay the bills real quick. So, Theo, if you can. I got to put Theo on the spot here. I think we need to get like a Vanna White or someone to come by with the sponsors, do that. So I think we're going to take that while I'm waiting on Theo. Amelia, I'm allowed to say no without an explanation. Absolutely. Absolutely. Listen, no is a complete sentence, right? How many times have you seen that? That is a complete sentence. Everyone feels that they need an explanation. No, you don't. Right? So, Theo, we'll put that on hold and we'll come back to that. So, I want to speak to the person who knows this message is for them, right? I want to speak to you guys, right? You know this message is for you, but you may already be like becoming defensive. You may already be like, no, I'm not in this victim mindset. No, I'm not thinking this way. No, I'm not hiding behind this tired word, right? Right. Maybe you're saying, hey, everybody, what's going on? It's Lex from Mental Warrior 22. Listen, I don't just bring sponsors here to fill up space. I like to bring on those who like to help others. And lately I've been working with Empowering Holistic Health. And I got to tell you right now, it's done wonders for my body. We often talk about mental strength, but your immune system, your energy, your recovery, that matters too. But it's just not surface level stuff. It's real holistic support, your nervous system, stress, nutrition, the full picture. So if you've been feeling off, if you feel like you ain't operating on 100%, then it's worth checking them out. That's Empowering Holistic Health. They're a proud sponsor of the Mental Warrior 22 show. Check them out. That's a cool dude. I need to get him on this show. Very quickly, if you guys ain't seen the post, that ad that we just put up, they are the new proud sponsor of the Mental Warrior 22 show. It is Empowering Holistic Health. I would encourage you to check it out. One day, I will share a little bit more about my story and how sometimes you guys see the tremors and the handshaking. My close friends know what's going on in my life, what happens, but I will tell you that it's working wonders for me. I have been using some of the products and it's actually helped me quite a lot with my tremors. So, Theo, a lady I was dating forced me to start dating other women because she was always accusing me of dating other women. I like what you did there, Theo. We're going to put it on the woman you were dating. Luann, great supplements. I agree. Danielle, yeah. Matt, help is on the way. All right. So going back, some of you might start getting defensive with what I'm saying and what we're talking about here, right? Maybe you're saying you don't know what I've been through, right? Oh my God, I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. And you're right. There's some situations I may not have gone through what you're going through, right? I don't know your exact story. I don't know every detail. I don't know every betrayal, every disappointment, every private battle that some of you are facing. But I do know this. Pain can explain you without excusing your refusal to grow, right? And that's not cold. That is respectful because I respect you enough to believe you are not powerless. None of you are powerless, right? So I want you to understand pain can explain you without excusing your refusal to grow. So what part of your pain have you been using as an explanation that has quietly become permission to stay the same? What in your life, right? And I hear that a lot, right? Like I hear people sometimes in the most subtle conversations when someone's being an asshole. How many times do you hear, oh, well, I can't help it, I have PTSD. No, PTSD is no excuse for you to be an asshole. You're probably an asshole already. You're just hiding behind that PTSD. Other things in your life, doesn't matter what it is. Oh, well, I have this going on, so I can't do this, right? And again, There are certain situations that absolutely, that's like, you got to understand the difference. There are people who legitimate have issues that are preventing them from moving forward, but there are ways for everyone else, or even in those situations, it's taking you out of that mindset, right? How many times have you seen people do the impossible, right? The amputees who are like finding ways to still participate in things, the blind climbing mountains and doing things, right? Pushing past, not using that as an excuse, not using what happened to them, right, as an excuse, but instead turning it around and becoming something stronger. Meg, I hate when people say I was raised that. Oof, I was raised that way. Oh my God, I want to call some people out really bad right now, but we're not, right? Because I love my family. So we're not going to go there. And they're probably watching right now. So, but, you know, it's amazing how I often hear that. I was raised that way, right? You don't know my childhood and all that. Listen, I've heard you don't know my childhood from people I grew up with in the same home. So you you're not wrong about that, right? That happens. So I had to stop asking why the same energy kept showing up in my life, um, and start asking what in me kept making room for it, right? It's not about like, it almost sounds like when you're in that cycle, that relationship that you continue to go back to, or the relationship you continue to stay in, right? And it's that saying, right? Stop getting mad at the clown for being a clown and ask yourself why you keep going back to the same circus, right? It's kind of the same way, right? Stop asking yourself why the same energy kept showing up in your life and start asking what in you continues to make room for it, right? Linda, yes, we have the power within us. We are more powerful than we know. Absolutely, right? And I know that's not easy, right? Because it's easier to point it outward. It's easier to blame someone else. It's easier to say it was just bad timing. It's easier to say, wrong people. It's easy to say the circumstances were unfair, right? And yeah, sometimes it really is the wrong people, right? Sometimes you meet someone and like it's just they're shitty people, right? Sometimes it really is bad timing, and sometimes it really did hit hard, right? But there are also a lot of moments where you had to admit, I was tolerating what I should have confronted. I was delaying what I should have decided. I was replaying what I should have released, right? So, where are you still making room for what keeps hurting you? Marie, my mom is the greatest gaslight I've experienced. Nothing is her fault. I'm to blame for all of it. That has shown up in all my relationships, romantic and non romantic. And I'm sorry that that happens, Marie, especially when it happens from a parent, right? Again, from someone who's supposed to love you unconditionally, right? Understand, Marie, which I'm sure you already know, that that has zero to do with you. It has affected you nonetheless, but that has zero to do with you. And the moment you, it's not trying to convince yourself, but the moment you truly understand and believe that, right, that that is her trauma to unpack and has nothing to do with you. She just projected it outward, right? So there is a form of victim mindset that shows up as also as waiting, right? This is the victim mindset that shows up as waiting, right? Whether it is waiting to feel ready, you're waiting for an apology, you're waiting for that perfect time, that perfect timing, right? You're waiting for the motivation, right? Sometimes, how many of us are like, oh, I'm just waiting for a sign, waiting for someone else to finally change, right? So sometimes waiting is wisdom. For some, waiting is wisdom, but sometimes for some, waiting is fear, right? It's wearing that spiritual language, right? That waiting word, right, is mostly fear based. What are you waiting on? That sounds just like but, right? I want to do this, but I'm just waiting on a sign, right? So what are you calling timing that is really avoidance. What are you saying that you're waiting on, but it's really you avoiding? I want you to think about that. Marie, so you have to balance accountability. It wraps you. I got it now. It warps you. Sorry. Right? So, what are you calling timing that is really avoidance? It might because if you know what needs to happen and months have gone by and the same issue is still sitting right there in front of you, it might not be a timing problem anymore, right? It just might be a courage problem. And again, it is not an attack. I need you to think about that. It just might be a courage, right? You're afraid, and that fear is what you need to take a long, hard look at, right? So choose one thing tonight that you're going to stop waiting on, right? Choose one thing, right? And I need you to circle it in your mind. That's your next move, right? So I want you to drop one word in the comments for what has been weighing on you lately, right? Drop one word in the comment that's been weighing on you lately, right? Whether that's anger, pressure, loneliness, fear, shame, confusion, grief, resentment, exhaustion, right? I want to feel the room, right? Drop that one word in there, right? And those words, and as those words are coming in, understand this. You are not weak for feeling those things, right? You're just human, right? Life is not happening to us. You're just human, and you're allowed to feel every bit of those things. So the issue is not the feeling. The issue is when the feeling becomes a residence, like instead of just a signal, right? When you decide to live in there, right? Instead of just understanding it's a sign. That anger, what's it mean? Where's it coming from, right? Don't live in that anger. Don't decide to make that your new identity, right? What are you feeling? Is what you feeling something that you're listening to or something you're living inside of? Is something you need to think about as well, right? Because feelings are messengers, right? We just mentioned that. What is it telling you? Feelings are messengers. They're never meant to become your owner, your master. They're just messengers. They're trying to tell you something, right? Just as much as we talk about when we see those angel numbers, right? Those are signs, those are messages, right? Understand that those feelings are just like that, right? So also understand that your feelings, they're 100% valid, right? They're not always just instructions, right? Your anger may be telling you that a boundary was crossed. That matters, right? But anger does not need to become your whole personality, right? Your fear may be telling you that something matters deeply, right? That matters, right? But the fear does not need to make every decision, right? Your sadness may be telling you you need to grieve. Again, that matters, but that sadness does not get to tell you that your future is over, right? So which feeling has been making too many decisions in your life lately? Linda, not enough time in my day. I agree. So what would your healing sound like if you spent less time narrating their actions, and more time deciding your next step, right? I want to skip ahead a little bit here and talk about what your next step should be, right? What does your healing sound like when you stop justifying other people's actions and you spend more time deciding your next step? So I want you to keep this sentence in your head, right? What happened to me matters, but it does not get to become my whole identity, right? And I want you to remember that, because that sentence honors the reality without surrendering the future, right? Some of you have been choosing between two extremes, right? Either minimize the pain or drown in it. And there is another option, right? Tell the truth about it and still move, right? Have you been minimizing your pain, or have you been merging with it? Whether that is physical injuries, the grief, the sadness, the anger, right? Because that can keep you stuck, right? One pretends that nothing happened and the other makes what happened the center of everything, right? And I want you to choose honesty without the surrender. Like, that's the lane. That's where we're going tonight, right? Because most people most people do not repeat pain because they want the pain. Most people repeat pain because the pattern feels familiar, right? We mentioned a few weeks ago the that some of us are used to being in that familiar chaos than the unfamiliar peace. We're so used to that chaos, so we stay there, right? It feels safe, and it can feel safe even when it's unhealthy. So this is why people return to the same kind of chaos. This is why people choose the same type of relationships, right? The similar excuses, the emotional loops, the similar self-sabotage, right? Familiar is not the same thing as safe, and safe is not the same thing as healthy. Some of you have been confusing all of these things, right? It sounds the same to some of us when we're stuck in that pattern, right? So, how many times have you said, I know better? And then you still repeat the same pattern, right? Like, hey, man, you shouldn't have gotten drunk last night. I know. I should have known better. Hey, you shouldn't have, like, you should just leave him. He hurt you. I know. I know better. But then you still go back to the same thing, right? You keep repeating it, right? So I want you to be real with yourself, because the knowledge itself is not the transformation. Awareness is not obedience. Seeing the issue is not the same thing as confronting it, right? You know better. But there are people who can explain their trauma like perfectly and still let it ruin and run their whole lives. There are people who can use all the right languages and still avoid every real decision, right? So what do you know that you have still not acted on? Is something I want you to think about. That gap between what you know and what you do is where a lot of the frustration is living, right there, that gap, right? So the victim mindset also protects the ego. And I know that sounds strange, but if everything is someone else's fault, then I never have to look internally. I never have to look at myself. It's everyone else's fault, right? If everything is because it's unfair, then I never have to confront my inconsistencies, right? If my lack of progress belongs to the world, then I never have to measure my own discipline, right? This is why accountability can sting, because it threatens the version of us that like that wants the innocence without the effort, right? So that is not condemnation. That is like an invitation, right? You cannot heal what your ego keeps hiding. We go back to the kill the ego, right? And again, this isn't victim blaming, right? Because again, victim blaming is saying that what happened to you does not matter, right? That's not true, right? What happens matters. The wounds matter. The impact matters, right? What I'm saying tonight is your wound deserves care, not that permanent home, right? Your pain deserves compassion, not an endless control of your life, right? So that is the maturity. That is strength. That is how you move without lying to yourself, right? So who has been carrying disappointment with themselves? And I'm pretty sure most of us can say that's been us, right? Not just disappointment in other people, but disappointment within ourselves, right? When we say we know better, that is a disappointment. We're like, oh, why am I still in this relationship? Why am I still dealing with these people? Why am I still at this job? Why have I started this business? Right? It's that disappointment, because sometimes the hardest thing is to admit that it's not that somebody else hurt you, is that you kept betraying your own standards, right? You stayed too long, you kept shrinking, you stopped showing up for yourself, you talk big and yet you still move small. And that kind of self-disappointment can turn into shame really fast and live in that mindset, right? So I don't want you to excuse it. I want you to own it. Then forgive yourself enough to want to move differently, right? The shame is going to keep you frozen. So that honest self-respect is what's going to get you moving again. So, Rebecca, you have to be accountable to ourselves before we can hold someone else accountable. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I know we're asking the tough questions and we're saying some deep things here, right? And I don't want you to get embarrassed. I want you to get aware, right? Because awareness is not a sentence, right? This is a doorway. This is how we continue to move forward, right? So here's another sign. It's asking, you keep asking for advice that you already know you're not going to take, right? And that one stings. Listen, I'm guilty of that. I have a torn rotator, for example, and how many of my friends continue telling me, stop going to the gym, stop killing yourself, stop pushing, take a break, rest. It's something I would tell someone else, but I continue to get that advice that I'm never going to take, right? It matters because sometimes people do not want direction. They want that temporary relief, right? They want somebody to co-sign their delay, right? They want the comfort around their indecision. So have you been looking for guidance or have you been looking for permission to stay stuck? Is something that I've been having to ask myself lately. And I want you to be honest, right? So who keeps saying I am trying? Because sometimes trying is real. Sometimes trying is real, right? Sometimes trying is code also for avoiding a decision, right? Trying sounds noble. Trying gets sympathy. Trying sounds better than I'm scared to commit, right? Like I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to do that. Yes. Listen, all the comments talking about that I'm stubborn. I know, but it ain't about me tonight. So what have you been trying instead of deciding, right? Trying to be consistent, trying to set boundaries, trying to stop texting the wrong person, talking to the wrong person, trying to start a business, trying to go back to the gym, trying to ask for help, right? Because at some point, trying has to become choosing. That's where our power lives, right? So there is a payoff to staying in the victim mindset that people don't talk about. That's that enough, right? The payoff, maybe the sympathy, the lowered expectations, avoiding the risk of failure. It may be not having to be seen trying, right? Or being right about how hard life has been, right? So you gain that, right? So what do you gain by staying the way that you are, right? And this isn't a trap question. It's something I want you to be honest with yourself, because until you admit the payoff, you may unconsciously be protecting your pattern, right? And if the payoff is comfort, then say that, right? But then decide if comfort is worth the cost, right? Everything is up, like everything up to this point has been about seeing things clearly, seeing the story, the patterns, the avoidance, right? And I wanted you to ask yourself, what do I want in life to feel like if I stop leading? What do I want my life to feel like if I stop leading from my wound? I want you to remember that tonight, right? Not just what do I want to stop feeling? What do I want to build? Peace, discipline, clarity, consistency, spiritual honesty, right? What are you replaying instead of rewriting, right? Do not rush past these things. I want you to sit with it tonight, right? Matt, yes, Matt is the normal one in my group of friends here. And I never listened to that. So I think that tonight we should take a hard look at some of these things, right? We should take a look at these boundaries, right? What is one decision that would create immediate relief or momentum in your life? I want you to think about those things. Stop waiting to feel ready, right? People say, I will do it when I feel stronger. I will do it when I am more confident. And I will do it when the timing feels right. Like if you stay there, you're never going to feel ready. You're never going to feel right, right? Stop postponing. Do one thing before the fear becomes fair, right? Do one thing while your hands are still shaking, right? Have the courage, right? So I think we're going to have another day where we like push forward in this. We might have to do a part 2 to this because there is so much more, right? I want you to think about who are you when nobody needs you for anything, right? That's something else. So listen, you're more powerful than you think, and stop holding yourself back and stop waiting for the perfect time. I want to thank each and every one of you for coming out tonight, for listening. right? And for those who might want to do one-on-one, I am starting on my website a one-on-one for more speaking engagements. This is not therapy, right? Just more one-on-one for us to open up and actually talk. I will post the link in my bio. I will put a post out, but if anyone is interested in one-on-one timing, then please reach out to me and we will have a consult and make this happen. But for everyone who came out tonight, I want to thank you all, right? I want to thank you all for coming out, and I look forward to seeing you guys next week. Thank you for coming out. This has been a Warrior 22. Remember, we're stronger together. Have a good night.